Welcome to the Orykl Podcast, where we ask the big question: Hey, universe, what's going on? I'm your host, Huenu Solsona, and today we are exploring another fascinating spiritual journey. Let's get started. Universe, what is going on? I have an amazing guest today, Wendy Rose Williams, who will be sharing her incredible story. And I'm really going to hand over the floor to her because she's told the story many times in her life. And so it's such a pleasure to have you here, Wendy. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me as your guest. So what happened was in 1989, I was a newlywed, very happily married, and we were very excited to be purchasing our first home. And we purchased the home in Boxford, Massachusetts, so north of Boston. And my husband was traveling extensively on business. And I couldn't imagine what was going to start to occur. And what happened was very, very quickly, he had a business trip. And the very first night that he was gone, and I'm still settling in the house, thrilled to be there. It's on 2 acres. It's a large colonial home that had sat empty for over a year. And I go to bed, I'm all set for, work the next day. And I go to bed and I wake up right at midnight because I can see the clock next to me, and I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. Our bedroom was on the second floor, just to the right of the stairwell. Now, this petrified me. I should not be hearing anyone in the home. I've locked up for the night. I'm home alone. And this was February of 1990. So no cell phones. I didn't even have a landline in the bedroom. So I am petrified to hear these footsteps. So I'm sitting bolt right up in bed thinking, what do I do? And there was no lock on the bedroom door. So I got up as quietly as I could, and I tried to put a chair under the doorknob on the door to block it. And again, trying to make no noise. And I thought about, can I get out the window? No, the windows were way too high and I didn't have a fire ladder. And also, it was an area where it was 2 acre minimum. So the homes were really, really far from one another. So I wasn't sure that I could even call out to a neighbor if I needed help. So I'm petrified.
Sure.
But at a certain point, the footsteps just stop. So now I've really got a dilemma because I can't just go back to sleep because I don't know that the house is secure. I don't know if there's someone in the house. So I waited with bated breath for about 15 minutes. I hear nothing. And then I'm thinking through, what do I do to safely come out and check the house? And I'm thinking, okay, where's the nearest phone in case I need to go run into another room and barricade myself and call 911 if there is someone in the house with me. But I came out, I hear nothing, I see nothing. So I'm like tippy-toeing through my own home with just my heart up in my chest, making sure that everything is fine. And there's no one there. I checked thoroughly. There's no broken window, and there was a fresh snowfall. So I even turned on all the lights outside the house and looked outside the house. There's no footprints in the snow either. So it's like, well, where did those, how could I hear those footfalls so clearly? Clearly, I could hear them coming up to the top of the stairs. So I went back to bed, and very uneasy night of sleep for the rest of the night. I go to work in the morning, and the first thing I do is call a locksmith. And I hire a locksmith to meet me at home at the end of the day and put a lock on my bedroom door.
Right.
And I go to bed the next night and I'm feeling much more comfortable because I've got that lock on the door for whatever this odd occurrence was of this break-in that I couldn't quite understand. I knew I was not dreaming. I knew I'd been fully awake because I'd pinched my arm, the inside of my arm, really hard. when I was sitting bolt upright in bed, and I had a little bruise there the next morning. So this is not, this is not a dream.
And it didn't
So
cross your mind at the time that this could have been something paranormal. That wasn't in your no.
and I'll tell you why. I was an MBA. My husband was an MBA. That just, it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't part of my belief system. I could have really answered the question as a 28-year-old, what's a paranormal experience? I would have been looking at you blankly.
Right.
So, that's why that just didn't cross my mind. It wasn't part of my belief system or my experience. But that was clearly about to change.
Sure.
So the next night I go to sleep feeling proud of myself. Yay, got the locksmith here right away. Got this great lock on the bedroom door.
Yeah.
Same thing happens.
Oh.
And this time the dream starts going further, and I realize I have some sort of control over the dream. I didn't know the concept of a lucid dream, but I'm starting to notice that I'm really, really interacting with it. And the footsteps came further and further up. But what I now noticed was it was like the walls of the house just fell away. And I could feel like time was going backwards. I could feel like it was much earlier. And I also could see this large rock on our property that wasn't there. The house was in its place. So I'm starting to catch on. I'm like, something's happening here that's paranormal, even though I didn't have that term for it. I'm starting to sense there's a ghost here.
Right.
And
but
I can
you were
see
dreaming in this time, because the first time you were not dreaming, but now did you say you like sort of or like
the way it happened each night was it would start off as a dream and then be fully awake, still having this experience, sitting bolt upright in bed going, what is happening?
Yeah.
So it's starting to shift. It's clearly come up from the subconscious and the unconscious, and it's now fully conscious.
Got it.
I can see this young woman. She looks like she's maybe late teens, and I can tell she's from the colonial America time period because she's not only got on this long skirt and this matching blouse, but she's got the little white apron over it. She's got the little white kerchief covering her hair. So it's a very distinctive clothing. I'm like, oh, I think that's colonial America time period. So 1600s. And what she would do, and just the heartbreak from her was just overwhelming. And I just wanted to help her, but I had no idea why or how to help her. I didn't know what had happened to her. So I watched her. She would do essentially the same thing every time. She was always in the same outfit, this bright yellow skirt and matching top with the long sleeves. And I sensed that it was her best outfit. And she would get to this big rock. She had a little blanket or something to sit on, and she would put it up on the rock and then kind of scoot her way up to the top of this big rock. And she would look toward the east, toward the water. And I just knew in my heart, she was waiting for her beloved. She was waiting for the man that she just loved and cared for so much to come, and he was going to come via the water, but he wasn't coming. So she just felt so incredibly stuck. It just felt like this crazy time warp where she couldn't move on because he never came back. We lived in a home for 3.5 years, and I had that dream, that experience multiple times, several times a week, the entire time that we lived there. And I just felt so badly because I couldn't help her, but I tried to talk with her, but I didn't know how to reach her. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know the concept of helping someone up to the light, to help someone go home. I had surmised by this time that she was a ghost and she was
Yeah.
just stuck. But I didn't know who to ask to help her since I didn't know what to do. Let me just get this wonderful squeaky toy away from my dog here. So she's not narrating the whole time. And I tried to talk to my husband and he just looked at me. He's like, Wendy, there's no such thing as ghosts. You must be just nervous about staying on the property alone because we don't have an alarm system and you're home alone on this big property and you're just not used to it. And I'm traveling so much. And I'm like, oh, that's not it. But that was just kind of a dead end. He couldn't make sense of it either. And he didn't want to talk about it. He really didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I tried talking with my mother, same thing. Wendy, there's no such thing as a ghost. That's ridiculous. So let it go. Get a hold of yourself was the response there too. And I didn't know the concept of calling in angels to help someone to get to the light. And as I said, I just couldn't figure out how to communicate with her. So I was no longer afraid of her, but I certainly wanted to help her. And then something very interesting happened. In the 3.5 years that we lived in the home, we loved to entertain, and we were always so happy to have somebody come in from out of town and stay with us. And we had plenty of bedrooms. And we had 3 different people stay with us who didn't know each other at different times. And I told none of them this story. And when I'm just checking in the next morning, good hostess, do you have enough towels? How'd you sleep? Do you need any more blankets? Each one of these people, one was one of my best friends that I had known since the start of college. One was a cousin, and one was a friend of my husband's. And just all very, grounded people. No one's got this belief system. Each one of them said to me, you won't believe what happened last night. I had the most incredible dream, and there's this heartbroken young female colonial American ghost on your property, and she seems to be trapped here, and she just keeps climbing up this big rock, and her man's never going to come back for her.
Wow.
My jaw's on the floor.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, I'd not shared any of this information. I knew my husband had not. And how could they have the same dream? How could they have the same experience? And the precision to it was just, really, really matching. So at the end of 3.5 years, we had decided to relocate, and we were going to move from Boston out to the West Coast to Seattle. So we're getting ready to move 3,000 miles away. And I absolutely was thinking, what do I do to help this poor young gal? What can I do before we move to just complete this? Because I so want to help her. But again, I just didn't know how to do so. So we moved, and I honestly tried to forget about it because I just didn't know what to do. And flash forward 20 years. It was literally 20 years later. We moved in 1993. It's now 2013.
Yeah.
And my best friend out in the Seattle area contacts me by phone. And she says, are you sitting down? Which she'd never said before. I was like, well, I am now. You have my full attention. And at that point, by 2013, I had started to wake up spiritually. I had started to wake up in 2010. And by 2013, I could hear my guides quite well and had that good fortune. And my guides said, get ready, deep truth, just listen. And a friend shared with me was she had gone off to the bookstore and she wanted to purchase the latest Brian Weiss title. But she said something very odd had happened when she was in the bookstore. And instead, a different book that she hadn't planned to buy, had never heard of, called Sacred Spaces, had gotten her attention in an unusual way. It had like fallen off the bookshelf, like right at her feet, or just something had happened where she knew she absolutely needed to buy that book. She said it felt like the book was glued to her hands until she just said, okay, clearly I need to buy this one. I don't get it, but she went up to the cashier, purchased that book instead.
Yeah.
And she got home and again tries to put the book down, but can't because her kids are getting ready to come home from school. But again, she can't put the book down. And she's like, okay, I've got to just skim the table of contents. Clearly, I need to read something in here right now. So she skimmed through and she saw a chapter, How to Clear Your Space of a Ghost, which she thought was very odd, but she skimmed through it and she thought it was odd because she knew her home had good energy. She knew she cleared it regularly. She had just become a Reiki master, so kind of had those concepts down, was confident. And again, very, very, grounded, practical person, actually a medical technologist, a laboratorian, so trained scientifically. And what happened was a few nights later, after she purchases the book, Sacred Spaces, and reads that chapter, her dog wakes her up in the middle of the night, just staring at her, like our animals can wake us up if they need something. So she goes to let the dog out. She's trying to be really quiet to not wake up her whole family because it's right at midnight. And she remembered that clearly and mentioned that to me too. And she goes to let the dog out into the backyard. And instead of the dog being willing to go out, the dog starts madly barking at something and looking up at the ceiling in their family room. And so she looks up because the dog, trying to see what the dog is seeing, she's thinking, did it like a bat get in here or something? What's going on? And she looks up and she said her heart was just almost broken because she could just see the specter. She could see a ghost just circling and circling the ceiling in her family room. And she said the heartbreak emanating from this ghost was incredible. She said she felt like she almost got sucked into it herself. It was so strong. So she just went into the procedure of what she'd read. She started talking to the ghost and saying, you don't have a body. You need to go up to the light. You need to leave my home right now. You do not have permission to be in my home. This is my sacred space. Go on outside and go on up to the light right now. You will be helped, but you cannot be here. You do not have a body. So she said this took about 30 minutes of arguing with this incredibly stubborn specter. She got it cleared from her home, but she wasn't confident had gone up to the light. So she called me, shares the story with me, and she says, you need to understand that ghost is you from colonial America. And I know this sounds incredible, but we have a shared past life there. And the minute she was saying it, my guides from before she began speaking had said, listen to this, it's deep truth. You're going to understand it. It's just deep truth. And I said to her, oh my gosh, you were my best friend. You lived next door to me and we were lifelong friends. I've got it. I understand, but I don't know what to do to get my own ghost of my own past life to the light, because I've never heard of this. I didn't know you could be here now.
And how did she know? How did she know that this was your past ghost?
She said she knew the energy. She said she knew it was me because she knew so well me now, but she also was starting to be shown these scenes of us at Plymouth Plantation in Massachusetts together at the original colonial American settlement. And like I said, it was like we were narrating the story together, and we both had our just, jaw on the ground. Here's the medical technologist in the MBA talking about our past and we're both going, this is crazy.
Yes.
And we both said, I need to focus on cleaning up my mess. Clearly there's something that I haven't done. There's something that I need to do. And she just said very kindly, I'll help you any way I can, but I just keep hearing you need to clean up your mess. I said, I agree. I am so sorry. I disturbed your sleep. I'm embarrassed. I just don't know what to say. But it kind of makes perfect sense that I would go to a friend for help.
Sure.
And it turned out I actually went to another friend in my specter, in my ghost form that night too. And another friend, and it was interesting, her husband was traveling. She also lived in the Seattle area. Her husband was traveling on business, and she said her house alarm tripped that night. And she had to get up and, heart pounding and go through and check that the house was secure. And she's like, there was nothing there, but I thought of you. So it's like, how interesting. So this energy is just presenting again and again the same way.
Yeah.
So this is 2013. I don't know how to clean this up. I don't know what to do, but I did have the good fortune at that time of having two friends who were psychic mediums.
Right.
So I went to each of them separately and gave them a very brief summary and said, is it possible that I have a ghost and that ghost is me? And if so, how do I help her? How do I clean this up? And both of them looked at me and said, oh, wow. Oh my goodness. I've not seen this before. You're right. I can confirm that you are the same soul. That ghost is you. You are that ghost. But above my pay grade, I know how to clear ghosts, but I don't know how to clear a ghost that's attached to the person standing here asking me the question.
Right.
Right. So that was the additional complexity to it.
Yeah.
One of the two did say, but I think I know someone who might be able to help you. My spiritual teacher has a lot of experience with ghosts. She has helped me with a ghost situation of my own that was different, but she helped clear my home to be able to sell it, because it was not selling, because there was a stubborn ghost couple that wouldn't leave the house. So she recommended me to the spiritual teacher who I'd never heard of, because I was new to this, but knew it was a great referral. I was so grateful for it. And I called and made an appointment right that day with her. But it was going to be a couple weeks before we could have the appointment because of her schedule, my schedule, trying to sync up. So in the meantime, I started to realize what I needed to do. I just decided to work it like a mystery, just be a detective the best I could. I had learned how to meditate. I knew how to talk with my guides. So I just sat and started to try and write down what I knew, what I didn't know, and I just asked for help for her and for myself. And what became really clear was, over time, I actually identified her. I got her name. I learned what had happened to her. She had come over from colonial America. Her father had been one of the original people who came over on the Mayflower in 1620, which kind of shocked me. So this was like a historic family. You actually look them up. And her father had been Richard Warren, and she had come over 3 years later aboard the Anne of London, was the name of the ship. And she'd come over with her stepmother and with her sisters. And I'm Canadian, so I didn't know a lot about colonial American history, which I think is actually good, because I wasn't influenced by a lot of personal knowledge. It was coming through via meditation and via auto writing and journaling. And occasionally my guides would say, okay, we want you to Google with us now and look this up. And that will So occasionally,
Your
very curious.
guides showed you, your guides led you to her.
Yes, so they were helping me understand what had happened, just some of the historic pieces. But basically, she told me her story. So she came over 3 years later, and that's historically accurate. It was mostly men on the Mayflower because they had no idea what they were going to. This was the New World. They
Yeah.
had no idea how to create shelter. Was it going to be safe? How to grow food? So most did not bring wives and children because it was considered too dangerous. So it's mostly men, and this historically fit to have sent for wife and children, on later voyages. So, but what happened that was clear as day to me, I could feel myself as her. And Anne was just, by that time, I knew her name. I knew her name was Anne Warren, and she was the second of 5 daughters. And she was narrating to me and telling me, and I could feel how uncomfortable that journey was over on the ship. Let me tell you, this is not like coming on our modern cruise day cruises. This was on a merchant ship.
Wow.
They're not built for humans. We were down in a hold that was meant for wine, and it was only about 5 foot tall. So a lot of people were, trying to stoop. It's not comfortable. You sure don't have fresh air. Many people were very seasick. You don't
Right.
have showers. You don't have bathrooms, and it's a several-month journey at
Wow.
that time. So very, very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and I could just feel that journey. And we just were so excited to get to go up on the decks when it was calm, and to be able to go out and gulp in some fresh air. And on one of those occasions, as Anne, young teens, like 12 years old, I saw the ship's captain, and I just saw him, and I could not take my eyes off him. And I knew his name. It was Captain William Pierce. And because I'd heard other passengers talking about it, and this came through to me when I was meditating, and I actually learned his name first before my own. And I just looked at him and looked at him. I thought, there he is. There's my future husband. There's my soulmate. I know this man. This man is so, so special to me.
Yeah.
And many, many things happened over those teen years. Bottom line, Anne Warren had a clandestine sort of relationship with him that was very inappropriate and would have been frowned upon in her times. He's in his late 20s, and she loved him with everything she had, and she thought they were going to get married. And the last thing he ever said to her when she was about 18 was, "You're so special to me. Wait for me. I will be back for you."
Oh.
So this just leaves her in limbo, because he's, of course, out living his very big, very adventurous life. Captain William Pierce is actually the ferryman of the North Atlantic, known for bringing over more people successfully than any other ship's captain. So he's just traveling all over, and actually turns out to have a wife and children, which she never knew.
Oh.
So he then disappears. There's no closure. She never sees him again after she's around 18. And her father had also just died. And that was a devastating loss. He was in his 40s and is leaving behind a wife and 5 daughters, and also 2 infant sons, because his wife was actually a second wife, and the 5 daughters were from the first wife who died in childbirth with the 5th daughter. So to be a woman alone at Plymouth Plantation in the 1600s with 7 children, I can't imagine what that was.
Yeah.
But so there's just so much emotion going on. Anne finds it really, really hard to let go of this inappropriate match that's really not a match at all, but she doesn't know that. She loves him. She thinks he loves her. She just thinks he's waiting for her to get older so he can ask for her hand in marriage. And she thinks their final day together, he doesn't do that because out of respect, her father had just passed on a few weeks earlier. So she thinks that's why he doesn't ask for her hand in marriage. So she's officially ghosted. You got to get the irony of that at that point.
Yeah.
Her older sister is who she's confided in finally, as well as her best friend knew what was going on and had been just trying to support her through this. Her best friend knew this was really inappropriate and should not have been happening. And what happened was she spoke with her older sister, and she was very psychic. She was very just knowing, seeing the sea captain and knowing this is my soulmate.
Right.
This was not typical for this time period. She'd confided in her sister, and her sister said, do not ever speak of that again. That is very dangerous. Do not speak of that again. We can be persecuted for that. Do not ever share that again. So she's trying to internalize, and it was very hard for her because she knew her truth, but she had really a belief system that aligned pretty closely with the Native Americans who lived in the area and were being displaced by the colonials with shocking effect. But so she's really got no one to talk to. That was very other than her best friend. So she is able to recover from her heartbreak enough after about 3 years that she does meet and marry a lovely man from England who came over on a later ship. She marries Thomas Little. So she becomes Anne Warren Little, and she goes on to have a beautiful big family. This was common at the time. They had 9 children, and very, very happy marriage, many grandchildren, just this family. So she's tried to put the past in the past, but it had always been in her heart what had happened to William, because she didn't know where he'd gone. And so now flash forward to the end of her life. She's in her 60s. Her husband Thomas had passed on. She had not dealt with it well. She was very lonely despite the big family, because she's now a widow, misses her husband so much. So she gets this spunky black tomcat for company, and it's living in her little cabin with her. But many, many, many things have changed between the colonial Americans and the Native Americans in the area, and war is coming. War is brewing very quickly. So she hears her cat meowing very loudly one morning, about 4 a.m. It wants to come in, and so she steps outside onto her tiny little front stoop to let the cat in. And she Indian arrow into her lower left abdomen, right underneath the lung, and she goes down, and she's dying on her front porch with this cat just caterwauling and just screaming all around her. And it's frantic. She leaves her body, but she's frantic because this was a major attack, and she is frantic. What's happening to her family, what's happening to her friends. She has so many people she loves and cares about, so she doesn't leave her body. She watches all the carnage that happens that day and is just taking in this horrible event of what happens, and
They came into the house. The Indians
yes,
came into the house and they killed some of the family members, or
pretty much everyone.
Oh,
It was called
wow.
King Philip's War, and the colonial Americans had eradicated the native way of life. So there's very much two sides to this story.
Mhm.
In 50 years of history, we essentially had eradicated a beautiful people who had
Yeah,
lived there for 7 to 8,000 years. And we had eradicated them by being told by our king, this is the new world, no one lives there, go
mm,
ahead and fill it.
sure.
You
Yeah.
know, I can't
Mm,
even,
yeah,
it was a different time. It's all I can say.
yeah.
So Anne does not pass over to the light because she's so confused. She's in so much pain. It's so shocking. There's so much emotional turmoil. And she goes back in time to William telling her, wait for me. You're so
Right.
special to me. Wait for me. And since he had never come back during her lifetime and she never knew what had happened to him, she thought he must mean now. I just need to wait for William before I pass over to the light. So she
Right.
doesn't pass over,
Wow.
and it creates an extreme ghosting situation.
Yeah.
So this causes major energetic problems for my soul and for
Right.
every life I've had since then, because
Right. Yes.
I'm ghosting. I
Yeah.
haven't forgiven William. I haven't been able
Mm,
to put this to bed. I just
mm,
don't understand. And there's so much emotional angst and turmoil around it. So
mm.
interestingly, I meet a gal who is a quantum healing hypnotherapist, and she offered to do a session for me. I
Right.
was so grateful. She actually came from out of state and was in the Seattle area, and she was a traveling hypnotherapist, and she did the session in my home.
Mm,
And she didn't particularly like animals. So I'm like, no problem. I'll just lock my kitty, I'll lock Midnight out of the bedroom because we were having the session with me lying comfortably on my bed.
yeah.
We went through profound memories came through and healing was going on for this lifetime because I'd been doing a good job and had healed a lot of it myself and put a lot of it together, but so much more came through.
Mm,
And during that session of the
mm,
hypnotherapy healing session, the very end of it was she was helping me go to the last day of my lifetime, and she was going to help me cross over successfully. But instead, what happened was when I was describing the cat just caterwauling all around my body, all of a sudden my cat came running into the bedroom because he had stowed away in the walk-in closet. I thought I'd gotten him out of the bedroom, but he'd actually was in hiding in the closet. So he came running into the room, and I give the therapist great credit because she just switched over to him like he was the client. And
uh,
because I said, oh my God, it's the same cat, it's the same cat, it's the same cat. This explains
right.
so much.
Right. Wow.
She just switched over to him, and she told him, Midnight, it's not your fault that she died. You didn't do anything wrong. She would have died anyway. She forgives you. There's nothing to forgive. This was a long time ago.
Mm,
Everything's okay now. You're safe. She's safe. This was a long time ago. But what was so interesting about that, the entire time I'd had this cat, and he was a senior at that time. For years he had always tried to escape out our front door. He was obsessed with trying to get out the front door, and the few times that he would get out, because he was an indoor cat, the
mhm.
few times that he would get out, he would just be screaming, meowing at the top of his head, running around on the porch, and he
Right.
never left the porch. He
Right.
never did it again after
Wow.
session.
Wow.
So if this is all just a figment of my imagination,
Yeah.
how do three guests in our home have
Mm,
the same experience? How do two of
yeah.
my friends, and I had not told either of my friends in Seattle about what had
Yeah.
happened 20 years ago in Boston.
That's
they didn't know
incredible.
anything about it. And also, how did my cat get that
And tell
healing?
me, and do you know if she's now passed on to the light?
She absolutely passed on to the light. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I'm at the point where I've got the appointment with a spiritual teacher that specializes in ghosts, but I
Yes.
really wanted to do my own work. And
Mhm.
by then I felt like I had enough information. And interestingly, I had met in 2010, this is 2013 when this was happening, but in 2010, I had met a really important soulmate, and I had recognized him as Captain William Pierce. I knew he had been the gentleman that had been a part of this ghosting situation, who had abandoned me and not been forthright with the
Oh,
truth of what
yeah.
was going on.
Wow.
So we had dated we met in 2010, we dated through 2011, we dated for 13 months,
Yeah.
and it was highest highs, lowest lows. There were so many great things about it. We finished each other's sentences. He
Yeah.
had the soul contract to wake me up spiritually. He'd
Right.
introduced me to Michael Newton's Journey of Souls. He had introduced me to past life regression, and
Yeah.
that was had then led to me having the quantum healing hypnotherapy
Right.
session.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really important,
Yeah.
many beautiful aspects to it, but the relationship had become very toxic. It wasn't good for
Mm.
me,
Mm.
and he ended it.
Yeah.
Interestingly, he chose to end it after 13 months of being together exclusively. He chose to end it via email,
Yeah.
which got me really angry, very hurt and angry, and it just felt like too
And
casual, too convenient,
yeah.
very, very chicken. And I told him that after cooling off for a few days. And
And
so
did he recognize that he had been William in the past life? Was he?
he didn't know about that one specifically,
Mm.
but when I did talk with him about it and said, I have something really important to tell you, because it was 2013, we're no longer
Yeah.
dating.
Yeah.
And I said, can I tell you something? Can you please just listen with an open mind and
Yeah.
tell me what you think? And as I shared the story with him, he said, I wasn't aware of that. I
Mm.
feel terrible. I
Mm.
know it's true. And I do have many lives as a sea captain.
Oh,
And I
wow.
know I've been working to be more in integrity. I
Mm.
know I have many women angry with me, feeling abandoned by me from those types of lives. And he said, sometimes it was circumstance, your ship would go down. And he says, other times, clearly I wasn't being on the up and up.
Yeah.
Uh,
That,
so
yeah, that's, no, go on. Sorry, finish.
So what we did, I said, I am guided to do a ritual and get her home to the light. And she clearly loves the drama of the hour of midnight. I said, are you willing to pick a night and just meet and stay up with me and do some ritual? And I said, I feel like we need to light a bunch of white candles and just
Yeah.
lift her up and get
Yeah.
her back to the light,
Yeah.
and just she needs to know what happened, because I don't think she from that time period understands. She needs closure. She
Mm.
just never got closure.
Yeah.
He agreed, which I thought was very kind of him. He agreed and said, again, I want to help you and I need to make this right. So just tell me what to do and I'll absolutely do it with you. So we did a ritual and worked to send her up to the light. The energy in that room was so intense. And he said the same thing as me. He said, it's like there's four of us here. It's not just you and me now,
Wow.
it's me
Yeah.
then. And it was just, and I'd done a lot of just heart searching, heart just trying to understand what she needed to get the closure so she could heal. And I said, we need to show her that you were married, and he was divorced at the time. I said, do you still have your wedding ring? Can you put a wedding ring on? We need to show her your hand. We just need to explain to her what happened.
And did you feel like she went? Did you get confirmation?
She started to go.
Yeah.
In the last minute, she said, oh, but I'm not going until I get a public apology from you, William. I really appreciate everything you've both done, but I'm not leaving until then. And I'd like to come to your birthday party, because he's planning a 60th birthday party for himself that I was invited to. And I'm like, oh, heck no, absolutely not. She's going to the light now. I'm done with this. I have the body. This has been so emotionally difficult. We're right at the point. And he says to her, of course you can come to my party. And I'm looking at him daggers like, no. So I then had to spend like another 4 or 5 days waiting, and just the emotional turmoil and angst from her. It was horrible. Couldn't wait to get her home to the light. So went to the birthday party, and it was held in a restaurant in a private room, a large round table. And what I did was, he'd asked for toasts from people in lieu of gifts to please just, share a fun memory or a toast or something like that. And when everyone stood up one by one and did that, I was the last person and to do so, just because of the way the circle had started. And what I did was I stood up, and the day of the party, I just sat down because I was just compelled to write something down, and it was just auto writing from her. And she literally wrote him a letter, and it was literally addressed, Dear William, from Anne. And so I presented it as a toast from someone that was not able to be at the party. So after I'd what I needed to say at Wendy, I said, I'd like to share something from Anne, who couldn't be here in person tonight. And he looked at me and he knew exactly what I was saying. So it was just something between the two of us. He publicly apologized.
Nice.
He publicly apologized and said, Anne, it's so special in my life, and I did not treat her well. And I just need to say that to the group here, and that's all that needs to be said. And I handed him the sheet of paper at the end of it, and he could see that it was written to William from Anne. So they closed it out, and that night I was finally able to get her to the light. I cannot tell you how my health improved.
I wanted to ask you if you'd had changes when that happened.
My emotional, I cannot tell you how much less scattered I was. The emotional craziness around romantic relationships was gone, because they had just been too intense. I had always felt like my romantic relationships were just cursed, like they just weren't going to go well. And it was profound.
That's incredible. Tell me something, because I've had a ghost in my house as well. This is many years ago, very briefly, but I'd moved in with a boyfriend, and I also heard steps up the stairs. I was in the bath, and my cat looked at the door of the bathroom, and I covered myself because I could hear the steps. It was a creaky stairwell. And my cat looked as this person, walked right next to the bath, and she was staring at, his eyes. I got out of the bath, I was petrified, but a few things happened there. But tell me now, there are so many ghost stories. What would you say to somebody that has a ghost in their house? Who should they look out for, or can they do something? Because I did a ritual with a friend who knew a bit about this, and we actually heard the ghost leave. We both heard, this noise. She's got experience in this. Is that what you
say? Don't be afraid. You have a body, they don't. They can't
Yeah.
hurt you.
Yeah.
Have compassion.
Yeah.
Ghosts are often lonely, and
Yeah.
that's why they're just trying to reach out and get some attention, get some help. They're often stuck in this just emotional angst. They didn't cross over for a reason. They might feel that they didn't deserve to go up to the light, or they died very suddenly and they're still trying to help loved ones or see what help happened to loved ones, or
Right.
they might be very angry with how they passed. They might not even know that they passed. They may
Right.
not understand that. So they can just be caught in this quagmire of emotion. But just talk with them with compassion if you feel comfortable doing that, and just explain, you need to go on up to the light. Let's get you outside. Let's get you out up to the light. You'll be helped. There'll be wonderful assistance for you. You'll feel so much better when you get home. Everything will make sense to you then. You've done nothing wrong. You deserve to go up to the light. So often it can take just some compassion, some cajoling. You might be able to hear something specific. They may say, but this, they may give you, and you may need to but be very firm. Be very, very firm.
I heard that. Yeah.
Just reclaim your space. If you do not want them there, they need to be cleared from the space. You can call in angels for them. You can call in help for them, but just remove them with compassion, but firmness from your home. And I think getting them outside and then getting them to look up to the light, because they might be so low energy. They may have been here so long and caught in such a repetitive loop, is another symbol of it. Often why they show up in bathrooms is water is just a conductor for energy and for spirituality. And it really scares us. I can really, see in the mirror.
We ended up moving. We left the house. We were there for like 6 months or something, but every time he was gone, my boyfriend at the time, the light of our bedroom would switch on, because it was one of those that you tap like this. I'd wake up in the morning and the light would be on. And so even though we got the ghost out when my friend was there, the ghost would be in the lift. The door wouldn't close. We would hear this noise, like as if somebody was in the doorway, and nobody was in the doorway. But the building knew there was a ghost, especially that floor.
Really?
Eventually moved out. We couldn't. I was just too scared. This is long ago. I think today would have been maybe a little bit different. We are out of time though, but this was just such an incredible story. Thank you for sharing it. I know that a lot of people will resonate with that because ghosts are around. So thank you for giving those tips on, what to do. And there's many resources that, people can look on the internet as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And it's just so great that you also got to validate that story, and just, it's fascinating. We've seen so many movies around that period, so I can clearly picture Anne and William in that time. So
yes.
Thanks, Wendy, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. She dictated her story to me. So that's what I had to do. It was such an intense experience. So I actually wrote it as a book.
We're gonna put those links, because I think it's a wonderful story. I love that. We're gonna share. I know that you do help people. Tell us maybe very briefly what you do right now.
What I do is I'm now so privileged to be a past life energy healer, and I help people release energy that doesn't serve them, whether it's chronic pain, anxiety, depression, or stuck energy. And just get them feeling happy and healthy, and that their life has a purpose.
That's amazing. And so much of our stuff does come from past lives. I know in Orykl, when we, many channelers can, in fact, most of them do go sometimes to some past life, because we carry that energy with us, right? Or la life. So
yes.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the wonderful questions.
Thank you so much. We'll see you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.